what I have learned is that I have misjudged celebrities and their memoirs. So I will no longer dismiss celebrity memoirs as just being a cash grab and these shallow celebrities who have nothing to say, because that's not true. Because so many of these celebrities do have something to say and they do have a point to their stories. Hello and thank you for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura and today I am tier ranking over 20 celebrity memoirs. I have read each and every one of these, most of which I have read in the last 2 years, so they are pretty fresh in my mind. Right off the bat, I want to say with memoirs, I'm not judging these based on like who has the more interesting life story, because that's not fair. I'm judging it based on like what was this celebrity's intent in writing a book, right? Because with celebrities, I always go into it thinking like, what's the point? Are they doing it just as a cash grab because they're a celebrity and they know they can write a book and it will sell decent simply because of who they are? Or did they have like a greater purpose to this book and a deeper intent with it? And did they achieve the purpose that they set out to with writing this book? And then also like, was it engaging and was I invested in the story? And did I feel connected to them, right? Because with any memoir, whether it's written by a celebrity or not, once I'm done, like I want to feel connected to that person and almost like I know them on a deep level because I have read their memoir. You know, even if there's someone I've never met, you just feel like you know them because a memoir, you should be sharing just so many vulnerable and personal details, and the reader should just feel connected to you after they finish. And then not all of these celebrities are actors, but a lot of them are. And so for my tier ranking titles, topics, I chose different awards. So the number one is the Palme d'Or. This is for books that obviously are 5 stars. I highly recommend. I felt connected to them. They were entertaining and interesting. The writer was vulnerable. They got deep. They had great insights. And there were things about this book that made me reflect on my own life and that like have even changed me in one way or another. So really, you know, 5-star books for me, more often than not, I give a book 5 stars when it like feels life-changing, right? Sometimes it can be, I mean, actually even ones where it's like they're entertaining and fun, even those can be life-changing to some extent. So that is the top tier for me. And then next up we have Academy Award. This is one where like the author clearly had like a purpose behind their memoir and I felt like they achieved their purpose and I feel connected to them, which I mean, this is very subjective, so I do get that. But even so, the Academy Award level, they're still like books I would recommend and I think the general audience should read and they would appreciate whether you're a fan of the celebrity or not. And then BAFTA, this is for books that are just kind of like, yeah, I mean, like it was fine. Golden Globes is one where I just start to wonder what their point was. And this is definitely one where they just stayed way too surface level. And then a Razzie is just like when they're terrible and they're clearly just a cash grab and there is no point and it just feels empty and pointless. Let's get right into the ranking now. Beginning with Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. This is one I just finished yesterday, so this is like very fresh in my mind. And this one, I'm gonna put in the BAFTA. Like it was fine, which I thought my Goodreads review for this one was kind of funny, so I'll like summarize what I remember writing. But I listened to the audiobook for it, and the way he narrates it, like he is very expressive. Although also there's parts where he's like yelling, and then there's parts where he's like talking so low, which is bad for an audiobook, right? Like, because I don't want to be turning it up, turning it down, turning it up, turning it down, because I listen while I run too, and so that's just annoying. So I wish he just kept his voice at an even level. That would have been very helpful. But he kind of sounds like he's drinking or drunk or something. So he sounds like he's some drunk person who's just like babbling about their life and they think they're so interesting and they're so deep and they're so thought-provoking, but they're kind of drunk. So it's like, you're not as deep as you think you are. But then the more you listen to this drunk person, the more you realize that they actually are pretty entertaining and you find yourself being drawn into what they're saying. So that's what this book was like, where he's kind of rambly and kind of like sharing stuff that's like, why are you telling me this? But at the same time, it was fairly entertaining. Will say I loved the parts that were about his family. So his childhood years in the beginning. And then throughout the book, he'll mention his family. So anytime it had to do with his family, I found that very interesting, very entertaining, very funny at times. His whole family was pretty wild and crazy and very interesting. But yeah, so the stories involving his family were my favorite part. But anyway, I talked about that one a bit longer than I should have because we have quite a few books I need to get through. So next up is Simu Liu, We Were Dreamers. I have actually not seen Shang-Chi. I haven't seen a Marvel movie since like 2015. Any superhero movie. I haven't seen one since 2015. But I have seen him in other things like One True Loves, which I did cover. But this one I liked. I am trying to decide, is it BAFTA or is it Academy Award? On one hand, I feel like it's BAFTA because so he and his parents immigrated from China. And so the immigrant story, like that's like the subtitle of that book is like an immigrant superhero story. And so that aspect of the book I found very interesting and it was different and it was unique. And that's also kind of his point in writing this book is because he feels like stories like his aren't often told. So in that sense, I really liked it. And I did find him very funny. But then like drama with his parents is a huge part of this story. However, like once he and his parents are on good terms again, like we never get the details on how they got on good terms again. In real life, did they just not really talk about it? Did they just start talking again and that was it? And there was nothing more? Like, I don't know. He could have talked about how it felt for him to reach out to his parents again, which he touches on, but yeah, like how volatile the relationship was between he and his parents was such a huge thing that I felt like their reconciliation should have also been a huge thing, but it wasn't. It just suddenly happened and that was that. So I think for the most part, I'm going to keep it on BAFTA because I liked it, but it wasn't like I didn't love it. I did like it better than Green Lights though, I think I would say. Up next, Jennette McCurdy, I'm Glad My Mom Died. Everybody knows this is going to go in the top tier. I do have a video for this. People talked about this book nonstop last year. I'm not even going to talk about it, but it's amazing. And then next up, Lauren Graham, Talking Really Fast. So this one, obviously, like I said, this is very subjective, but I'm putting this in Academy Award. This one, I have 2 Lauren Graham memoirs on here because she has written 2. And this one in particular is great if you are a fan of Gilmore Girls, because this one is, I mean, she talks about her life, but she definitely has like chapters dedicated to Gilmore Girls, both like the original run of Gilmore Girls as well as the Gilmore Girls, like a day in the life that they did like in 2016. And so I loved hearing about the original filming of Gilmore Girls. And then I loved hearing her talk about what it was like to come back to the sets, the recreated sets, and to just get to play Lorelai Gilmore again. And in general, I just loved her writing style. And she, Jennette McCurdy, I don't think she used a ghostwriter either. She like wrote that herself. And Lauren Graham, she is a writer. She has written fiction books as well. So she wrote this book herself. And yeah, I just loved her stories in here. And I also read this like right after finishing Gilmore Girls, so I was like the prime target for a book like this. So I will say, if you don't like Gilmore Girls, if you've never watched Gilmore Girls, I mean, you could still get something out of this, you know, out of the other chapters, but it is Gilmore Girls heavy at times. So that's the caveat with this book. But yeah, for the most part, I loved it. I think she's Lauren Graham. I just think she's awesome. And she was very entertaining and funny and also just insightful as well and very honest. And next up, we have Constance Wu, Making a Scene. This one is another one that I'm tempted. So this is like a series of essays, which some of these are like that, but it's not like a cohesive story. It's like each chapter is its own essay. And so some of them I liked a lot and others I was just kind of like, okay. But the more I think about it, I feel like there were more stories I liked than I didn't. So I'm going to say that goes in the Academy Award level. And then yeah, there was so much drama with her with Fresh Off the Boat because when it was renewed for another season, she tweeted about how like she was upset that it was renewed and she got so much hate for that. And I'm a fan of Fresh Off the Boat. And so I was like aware when all of this was happening. And so I really appreciated her sharing her side of the story. And yeah, her book, yeah, it was just very vivid and she was very expressive. And she also talks about, you know, essay that have happened to her on different occasions and just the way she wrote about it. I just loved it. And it has stuck with me. So many parts of that book have stuck with me. So yeah, that goes on Academy Award level. Steve Martin, Born Standing Up. This one I'm going to say is in the BAFTA. So this one is interesting because he only talks about, you know, his childhood and then he talks about The Jerk, which was his first movie, but that's where it ends. So it's mostly his childhood and his stand-up career before really getting into movies. But yeah, this one is very funny as you would expect. And yeah, it was interesting to hear his life story. And yeah, I just had a good time with this. And it made me want to read more books by comics because it was just so fun and so enjoyable. And he just shares different jokes and like his methods with these jokes and his, you know, the science behind comedy, right? Which I'm going to be talking about a Mindy Kaling book, but she talked about being on SNL and how they take comedy seriously, right? Like comedy is a serious thing. So yeah, anyway, just hearing his process behind some of these things was interesting in his childhood years. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend that if you're a fan of Steve Martin or if you're a fan of comedy. And Gabrielle Union, We're Gonna Need More Wine. She has written 2 memoirs. So this is her second memoir, and I loved this one. I'm tempted to put it higher, but I guess I'll put it in Academy Award. Her first book she wrote in like 2017 or 18, and then this one came out in 2021 or 2022. They were very close together. So when I saw she wrote a second book, I read her first one, and then I saw she had a second one, and I was like, what? Like, she just released a memoir. Like, does she really have like more to say so soon? But I read it and it was amazing. As far as like the stories she shares in this one from her childhood and college years, I feel like she kind of used her more interesting stories in her first memoir as far as her childhood goes. So this one, some of her younger stories kind of felt like, was she just trying to think of what story she could share that she hadn't shared already? But the stories about like what has happened in her life since writing the first memoir, like the ones that really were, you know, new occurrences essentially. Maybe, I mean, there were some older ones that I liked too, but basically what I'm saying is I like this one. I would recommend it. She is so eloquent. She also talks about different political events that happened and her viewpoint on them, and reproduction, because she had like issues getting pregnant and what, you know, that whole experience was like. And yeah, being a Black actor in Hollywood and Black actor in America and a Black person in the world. She's so well written. I love both of her books. This one is really good. I'm almost tempted to put it in the Palme d'Or, but I don't want to be overly generous with my top tier rating, so I will keep it in Academy Award. And next up, this is the second Lauren Graham book. And this is tough because there are some stories she shares here. Like, I remember the first half of this book, I was like, wow, like I am liking this even more than her first one. But then as the book went on, there definitely were some chapters that were, you know, they were duds, essentially. But for the most part, you know what, whatever. I'm putting it in Academy Award because she did have some great stories. Again, what it's like being a female actor in Hollywood and just different situations she was in at different points in her life. And this one is less Gilmore Girls focused. So if you don't care about Gilmore Girls, you could read this one because she does not talk about it nearly as much. I probably prefer her first one more, which if I'm ranking these, maybe that would be right there. Ooh, it's tough between those two. I'll just keep those as they are though. Anyway, up next, Paris, a memoir. I loved this one. It's either second best. I'm tempted to put it in Palme d'Or because this one was so good. She did get the help of a ghostwriter, but I don't really judge a celebrity for using a ghostwriter necessarily because these people aren't writers, right? But they still have a story that's worth telling. And I think like if they're working with a good ghostwriter, like it is written in their voice, especially when you listen to the audiobook and it is their voice telling it to you, like it just feels so genuine, right? Even if they weren't the ones who wrote every word themselves. But yeah, this one, I really loved her memoir. I'm going to keep it in Academy Award tier. I think that's a good level, but this one was fantastic and I definitely would recommend it. I have a whole video for it. Anthony Bourdain, Kitchen Confidential. I loved this book. Oh man, this is tough. This was one I read the longest ago. I think he passed away in 2018. And I had read this like the previous summer. Well, I grew up watching No Reservations. And then around like 2015, 2016, my husband and I got really into Parts Unknown. So we were watching Parts Unknown. We like had watched every episode. We were watching the current episodes as they were coming out when then he died. And I had read his book like during the midst of our watching this show. And so then when he died, like that one, like that was like one of the more difficult celebrity deaths that have happened. And then he committed suicide. And so it was just so sad. And his show, like I talked about this in a different video a while back, but his show just feels so intimate, right? You almost feel like you are the one traveling with him, you know? And so, yeah, it was just so sad when he died. And I do love Kitchen Confidential. He did write this himself. And this is from like 2000, I think. But yeah, and I've also worked in kitchens, both back of house and front of house. And so again, this was one that I just could relate to a certain extent. Yeah, it's a really good one. Finding Me by Viola Davis, Palme d'Or. That one's amazing. So vulnerable, so eloquent, so eye-opening as well. And then she just has, again, just like so much insight. It's just so beautifully written. And it's also just like so tragic and sad at times, but then almost like a novel, there's certain people in her life and the character arc they have was just like so incredible to see through the course of her story and so well written. Absolutely love it. Everybody should read it. Dave Grohl, The Storyteller. Man, none of these are very low. I'm like giving these very good ratings for the most part. This one though, maybe I'll bump it up, but this one was fine. I mean, it was entertaining and it was fun. But honestly, this isn't one that has like stuck with me. And then also, like, what has stuck with me is I remember he talks so much about reading different idols, musical idols of his. He is like in the Foo Fighters and Nirvana, but he talks about meeting so many different musical idols of his. And he's like, oh, Elton John, he's so amazing. He won't know who I am. But then turns out Elton John does know who he is. And he's like, oh, Dave Grohl, I love the Foo Fighters. And Dave Grohl is just so humbled that this famous celebrity knows who he is. And that happens many, many times where some famous celebrity knows who he is and he's so humbled by it. And after a few times that happens, you're like, okay, I get it. Can you stop name dropping now? We get all these huge celebrities love who you are and they know who you are and you're so flattered. So stop telling us these stories over and over again. Golden Globe might be a bit low for that. Maybe I just feel like I need to put some more on a lower level. Maybe that's not fair though. But honestly, like, it was fun and it was entertaining, and he has cute dad stories and stories from life on the road with the band. You know what? I'm keeping it in Golden Globe. There we go. But speaking of Elton John, I loved his memoir, and I'm putting it up there. That's how much I loved it. Again, this one, he was so funny, but he also is just so insightful, and so many things he has learned throughout the course of his life, and just so eloquent. And he talks about addiction, so I am biased because I do love stories that focus on addiction and just the way he talks about addiction. And there's parts where he shares, you know, like in rehab, they had him like write a breakup letter to like cocaine and his addiction, and just the letter itself was just so beautiful and so powerful. And just also being, you know, a gay man and just his journey with that, because he was married to a woman at one point, and just so his relationships, and then fame, and you know, issues he had with his parents, and how like that led him to be an unhealthy adult, and how he got healthy. And yeah, this one, you know what, forget it, I'm putting it in Palme d'Or, okay? Because that one, that's how good that was. That's how much I enjoyed that. I do have a video about this one, because I compare his memoir with the biopic Rocket Man starring Taron Egerton, which I also loved. So yeah, that one is so good. I highly recommend it. And now, time to get controversial with Elvis and Me by Priscilla Presley. This one, I think I give it 4 stars. Maybe I'll put it as the top BAFTA, because I thought it was a very interesting, eye-opening look into her relationship with Elvis. And this was written at a time in like 85, when I feel like people didn't know as much about Elvis as they do now. So I feel like this one was probably like very eye-opening for a lot of people, right? Because me reading it, a lot of it was stuff I kind of already knew, because I've just, you know, been hearing this stuff for years now. But nonetheless, I did like it a lot. And I thought, again, she had some sections that I thought were really powerful, where she just had so much insight into her life. And as she tried to figure out who she was, because she didn't know who she was, because Elvis molded her into who he wanted her to be, because she was so young when she got with him. And when guys want a girl that young, she was 14. I mean, when she moved in with him when she was 17, but still, someone in their teens, like, they are so like malleable, is that the word? Where like they're just so young, they can be manipulated to be shaped into who the older person wants them to be, right? So I don't have an issue with the age gap. It's when the younger person is so young that clearly they're easily manipulated. That's when it becomes like, that's not right. But if the younger person is like an adult, then I feel like the age gap isn't really a problem. But she was 14 when they met. She was 16 when they like met up again later on. And then she was like 17, 18 when she moved in with him, and he was 10 years older than her. So anyway, her journey into finding who she is as a person and discovering herself, I thought was just really beautiful. And she doesn't write this book in like an insulting way towards Elvis. I feel like you can tell that she does have a love for him still, right? And yeah, it's complicated because he was a manipulative person, but at the same time, like, she knows that he had a lot of his own issues that he wasn't getting sorted out. And so she has a lot of sympathy for him as she writes about him. And again, I do have a video all about this. I compared Elvis and Me with the new Priscilla movie, so go ahead and check that out. Anyway, next up, this is an Olympic runner, Meb. His last name is hard to say, but this one is fantastic. I'll put it up in this level, Academy Award. If you're a runner, if you're a distance runner, you should definitely read this. So he's an Olympic marathoner, and this is documenting 26 marathons and what he learned with each marathon he ran. And it is just a very inspiring book. So highly recommend. If you're a runner, yeah, you should definitely read this. But even if you're not a runner, I feel like you could read this and be inspired in whatever it is you do in life. life, you know? But it is aimed specifically towards distance runners. Next up, we have Out of the Corner by Jennifer Gray. Ooh, this is another one I loved. So funny story, I started reading this one last year when it came out. I got 20% of the way in and I wasn't really liking it, so I DNF'd. And then I recently got it from the library again and I picked it up where I left off and suddenly I loved it. So that's why like DNF, I heard another booktuber say it should be not for now because it's not like I'm done with it forever. Sometimes it's just not for now, maybe later, but not for now. So last year it was a not for now, but I picked it up this year and I loved it. So yeah, she is Baby from Dirty Dancing. She was also in Ferris Bueller's book, or Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And again, yeah, I was very invested in this story and I thought she shared so much into what it is like to be in Hollywood and the different guys she dated and her own issues. She also talks about going to Al-Anon, which I had not seen that coming, but she talks about Al-Anon and then eventually she got an AA and got sober. And then when she talked about Dancing with the Stars, that was something that I really liked as well. And I thought it was just a very inspirational section of the story. And also when she talks about motherhood, I loved that too, because I just loved how much she loves being a mom. She felt, you know, just so at peace and like, this is what I want to be doing and this is where I'm supposed to be. And she had no like guilt or no second thoughts. Like she just loved being a mom. And she said something like how she couldn't believe how miraculous giving birth was, because it's such an everyday occurrence that we hear about all the time. And yet like how incredible and special it is, right? And yet it's so normalized. Anyway, so I loved that. I'm not a mom, but I just loved the way she wrote about that. And yeah, in general, I loved her memoir. I'm using the same words, but insightful, vulnerable, eye-opening. Next up, we have Mindy Kaling's book. So Mindy Kaling is from The Office. She is a writer and an actor. Honestly, this one is going on Golden Globe level. This isn't your standard memoir. It's more, each chapter is just kind of her own ramblings, her own random things she wants to talk about. She does share stories from her life, but it's definitely not a memoir, because certain chapters are like things that make me cry, and then she lists things that make her cry, or the funniest things I've ever seen on TV, and then she lists the funniest things she's ever seen on TV. And then another one, like random pictures I have in my BlackBerry, because this was published in 2011, and then it's like these different pictures and her comments on them. Another one is like revenge fantasies I have while I'm running. And so there were certain things where it's like she's telling us this to be funny and it's supposed to be entertaining, and it is funny and entertaining, but there were definitely stories where it's like, why am I reading this right now? What's the point? Essentially. And then at one point she talks about how hilarious Will Ferrell is, but Will Ferrell was on The Office, and yet she says nothing about what it was like to work with Will Ferrell, right? Like, why aren't you telling us about that? So anyway, like it was okay, but definitely nothing too special in my opinion. And now Matthew Perry, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. I did love this one a lot. Rest in peace, Matthew Perry. The Big Terrible Thing is alcoholism and opioid addiction. So just addiction in general. And again, I'm a sucker for a story of addiction, someone overcoming addiction specifically. And yeah, that is his purpose to this book, is to try to help people that are struggling. And he just has so many beautiful passages, so many poignant moments. And his childhood stories are just like so endearing and sad and sweet, and he is funny. He's not like, his sense of humor isn't like the funniest ever, but there were parts that were entertaining and funny. But for the most part, I just found it to be a very touching memoir. And he was, again, just so open and so honest. And I would highly, highly recommend it. If you are looking for a book that like gives all the drama, all the details about what it was like to be on Friends, this isn't really it. Like, he talks about Friends a fair amount, but like everything is through the lens of addiction. So even his time on Friends, it's about like the addictions he was dealing with while he was on Friends, you know? So it's all through that lens, basically, is what I'm saying. So absolutely loved it though. Highly recommend. Okay, getting to the last few. So this is Gabrielle Union's first book, We're Gonna Need More Wine. And I did love this one. I don't know if she used a ghostwriter. I mean, ghostwriters can be so good. So either way, it's fine. But regardless, I really loved this book. And this one, she goes more to her childhood than she did in her follow-up memoir. So if you want more of like an autobiography, We're Gonna Need More Wine is the one to to go with. And then Do You Have Anything Stronger is just a great follow-up where she talks about more recent things in her life, I guess. Stephen King on writing. I loved this one. Again, this is for a specific audience. I think fans of Stephen King, of course, but the first half of this book is a memoir, different life stories, and like stories that shaped him into who the writer he is. But the second half is like advice on being a writer. If you want to be a writer, he gives advice. And then it ends with him talking about when he got hit by a car in 1999 or 1999, because that happened while he was working on this book. So then he ends talking about that. But yeah, I loved the memoir section. And then the tips for writing, I really loved as well. And it was one of those books where like, as I was reading about writing, like I would like to become a writer one day. And so reading that part, like it was so inspiring, and it made me just want to start writing, because hearing someone who is so amazing at what they do talk about what they do, and then especially he's giving you advice on it, it makes me just want to write and apply what he's saying. And I absolutely love it. I highly recommend it to Stephen King fans. Like just read the first half. If you don't care about writing, just read the first half where it's his memoir. And then if you do care about writing, definitely read the second half as well. And then we have John Stamos. If you saw my John Stamos review, you know I did not like this one. And we got to put something in the Razzies. So that's where John Stamos is going. You can watch my review if you want to hear more, but just very surface level. I didn't feel connected to him. I wasn't very engaged. Yeah, anyway, I didn't really get anything out of that book. And then we have the John Snowden book. John Snowden? Am I saying that right? So Edward Snowden. So if you don't know who he is, he leaked highly classified information from the NSA when he was working for them, because like the government is spying on Americans, and so spying on people all over through their cameras and things. And he was just like, oh my gosh, like this is wrong. And so he told some news outlet about it. And I really liked this book a lot. I'll put it before Green Lights. So when he's talking about the more complicated technological computer stuff, some of it just felt kind of dense, and I really had to like focus to understand, because I am not a computer whiz or anything by any means. But yeah, I thought like it was really interesting just hearing different things in his life that led him to where he was, and also like who he is as a person, and like why he was so bothered with what the government was doing, and why he felt like it was his duty to tell the people about it, right? Even if people would consider him a traitor, he felt like what he was seeing was so bad that it was his duty to his fellow citizens to let people know what was happening, you know? So yeah, another controversial one, along with Priscilla Presley. Speaking of controversial, Jada Pinkett Smith. This is another one that just recently came out that I recently reviewed, and I liked this one a lot. I think I liked it. I think I'll put her right there. Yeah, I have a whole video for this. It's 20 minutes long, so I had quite a bit to say, and I will just keep it short because this video has gone on long enough. But there you have it.
And as far as like the rankings within each individual tiers, this definitely isn't like the definitive ranking for me, because as I'm editing, I'm like wishing I had switched some around a bit. So I feel good about what tier the books are in, but the rankings within the tiers, just know like it's not, definitive by any means, basically.
I have a lot in the Academy Awards section. So, it's funny because celebrity memoirs, they tend to get a bad rap. And I am one of those people. In the past, I used to think like celebrity memoirs, like, oh, like they're always bad. But honestly, like the more celebrity memoirs I read, the more impressed I am. And I'm like, wow, I guess I was wrong all this time about, like, I shouldn't judge them. Obviously, there's bad celebrity memoirs out there. Comment some bad ones down below in the comments and let me know some celebrity memoirs that you have really disliked. Disliked not because it's like one thing if you dislike the person and so you therefore dislike their book, that's kind of not fair. But a celebrity memoir you disliked because they were just very shallow and it seemed pointless and it was boring. So yeah, like a lot of these, so many of these books I'm just highlighting like crazy. And then also the audiobooks are always great, especially if it's an actor narrating their audiobook. Those are always just so well done and they just add to the personal feel. Oh my gosh, I forgot one more. Let me add one more to this. So Rose McGowan, she has a very unique Hollywood story. I'm trying to put you right here. So yeah, to talk about hers real quick, she did not have a good experience in Hollywood. Harvey Weinstein, she spoke out against him back in like 2000 and 1999, 98, somewhere around there. And she was blacklisted because of it. And then just all the negative experience she's had on different TV shows with different directors. Like, she had very little positive things to say. And on one hand, she definitely came across as very angry and bitter, and maybe like at times that could almost detract from what she was saying. And there's certain moments where I wasn't quite on the same page with her and some of the things she has done or said. But she does have some great points though about Hollywood and how like Hollywood, I would like to think we've gotten better. This book is from 2016. I would like to think Hollywood has gotten better in a lot of these ways, but obviously what do I know? I'm not even in Hollywood. But Hollywood can be such a disgusting place, right? And yet we are letting them decide what is considered normal, right? And it's so hard to rate this one too, because I really appreciate what she's doing, and she is just being so brave. Like, I do think it was very brave of her to write this book, and it was brave of her to call out Harvey Weinstein when like nobody else was. And so and she experienced so much abuse and trauma like throughout her entire life, because she was literally born into a cult. So she has had a very extreme life. I will say that. I think I'll put it right here. Basically, what I have learned is that I have misjudged celebrities and their memoirs. So I will no longer dismiss celebrity memoirs as just being a cash grab and these shallow celebrities who have nothing to say, because that's not true. Because so many of these celebrities do have something to say, and they do have a point to their stories, and they are stories that have impacted my life in one degree or another, and they're ones that I've highlighted like crazy and that I have really appreciated. So yeah, let me know if you agree or disagree with these rankings. Let me know what your favorite celebrity memoirs are and what some of the worst memoirs are that you have read. And I will do a part 2 to this video, months from now. It'll be a while. But I do love reading celebrity memoirs. So once I have read, 20 more, I will do another one of these videos. So go ahead and comment your recommendations down below. Like I said, it'll be a while, like not anytime soon. But comment your recommendations down below, and I will come back to this video and check on it in the coming months for celebrity memoir inspiration. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you have not already, and I will link to one of my other celebrity memoir book reviews. I will link to the Jada Pinkett Smith one because that is a more recent one I have done, so go ahead and check that one out. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.